This is a short bite episode of Homeschool Together. Hello and welcome to Homeschool Together Short Bite Edition. Thanks so much for joining with us today. Today we got Ryan from the Dad Suggest blog, and he is going to talk to us.
Chess expert.
Well, yeah, master chess expert. I heard he beat Magnuson at least 4 different ways. That's the rumor out there. So Ryan, tell us. Well, thank you so much for being with us, but tell us why chess matters.
Chess is a beautiful game, and I love sharing it with kids because, like we actually talked about before, I think that if you can read and you have a good relationship with learning, then anything is possible. And chess is the most incredible tool for building that positive relationship with learning. And let me tell you why. Is if you have a kid, let's say they're struggling in traditional school and maybe they don't feel confident. Chess is something that they can learn a little bit, put it into practice in their next game, and maybe what they learned, they can use it to beat a friend. And so they learned something, and then they saw a chance to use it in the game, and they used it, and it helped them win the game. Now, all of a sudden, they have this positive relationship with the learning process. And then they go back and they say, wow, winning's fun. I'm going to go back and study more. And then they get better, and then they win more. And there's this success loop that is the process of education and putting work into it. And that is absolutely transferable to anything also. So that's one of the main reasons I love sharing chess with kids. And it really is just one of the reasons.
As a chess teacher for children, what is the best way, if somebody's listening right now and they want to get their kid into chess, what things can they do? Is there tools they can use? Is there like chess for kids?
Yeah, we've heard of story time chess and no stress chess. Is there a way you recommend to get into it for younger elementary kids?
Yes, definitely. Those two that you mentioned, Storytime Chess and No Stress Chess, they're both on our shelf, and I like both of them a lot. Storytime Chess uses actual stories. It comes with a storybook, and each piece is turned into a character, and the stories in the book explain why the pieces move the way they move. So it's a fun way. It's a fun way to teach young kids the basics of how to play. And something like No Stress Chess is a really fun tool also because it takes the decision making out of which piece should I move. And say you draw a card and let's say you have a choice narrowed down to maybe just 2 pieces. Depending on the way you're playing, you might have 2 choices, like I have to move my rook or a pawn. Or you could play a way where you have to actually move just the 1 piece. If you draw a rook, you got to move your rook. So it narrows down the scope of the game to, do you know how the pieces move, and takes away some of the decision making, and also closes the gap between the 2 players. Say if an adult is playing a kid and they have vastly different experience, it closes the ability gap also, and evens things out a little bit. And another thing that I would definitely mention while we're on this ways to learn is definitely a website called chesskid.com. It's absolutely incredible what they've done with videos and structuring it in a way that kids just absolutely love.
How do you balance chess theory with the fun of playing chess? And specifically, there's a lot of structure and different types of moves, whether they're like defensive and or offensive. There's famous games of chess where, people have certain types of patterns that they like to follow. How do you balance the rigorous, memorization that it takes to get to the upper levels of chess versus the enjoyment of playing chess?
That's definitely an interesting conversation with mostly the good news is that it's mostly an interesting conversation with the best players in the world, which I will never be a part of, right? So the very best players in the world, like Bobby Fischer was famous for inventing chess 960 because he was tired of the 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 predictability and the memorization, and he wanted a more pure game where it was more randomized and
Yep.
it didn't just boil down to who could memorize everything. Luckily, for the most casual, even above average chess players, you can memorize your openings, but you'll very quickly you're not going to get a 40 move forced draw like the grandmasters are. You're still and even like I said, even grandmasters, there's still a big difference between the best in the world and the best computer in the world. So it's the type of game where there's so much to learn, and the average human and even the above average human can learn more throughout their entire life. So it is interesting. It is true that there's a great deal of memorization, but when you first start, let's say we're talking about kids, it's all about the pure love of the game and trying to figure things out, and that never truly goes away. But you will start to learn certain openings that you enjoy, and you'll repeat them, and memory is quite helpful in that, but so is creativity. And it's not uncommon also to, say for example, try to get out a book early in the game and play a little creatively earlier to get your opponent out of book, and then you can get the kind of exciting game that kids love. So personally, I don't think it takes any love of the game away from me.
I had a quick question regarding one of the things that I was fascinated about is that in the world of extracurricular activities, most parents would be shocked at what can get you a scholarship to college. For example, I believe at Kansas State, you can get a scholarship for fishing because they have a fishing team. And I know some schools have surfing scholarships. And I know chess, you can get a scholarship to play on the chess team. I think a lot of parents can maybe discourage certain activities because maybe they don't see the value in that in more of an abstract, I don't think Johnny needs to be spending 9 hours a day fishing, but he could go to Kansas State to get a full rides fishing scholarship. What are the various things that kids can do with chess as they move up through their education, with respect to, say, maybe analogous to like basketball, where they're playing on AAU basketball teams and they're playing in, middle school and then high school, and then maybe they can get into college and play sports at a college level. What is the track for chess? Is there a similar track? Is it just go to tournaments? What does that look like?
So most of it is going to tournaments, like you mentioned, and depending on the state, the tournament system is better organized in some states. But let's say, for example, it's rare that it's the same type of organization as something like football or basketball. It's generally rare. The bigger states definitely very well organized, but generally speaking, it's more rare for it to be some sort of a system where there's like sectionals, district, conference, and state, that kind of thing. In the bigger states, yes, definitely, but generally speaking, not the same kind of organization as sports. Mostly it's with the same tournaments that adults are playing in. So they would play just open tournaments, and generally speaking, growth is, generally speaking, when you're working on growing your rating, or if you're, and that would be what would attract scholarships, basically, is just grow. You show your growth in the chess world by this rating system that that is easy to compare to others. And the thing about those, it's definitely true that you can get chess scholarships. And if you do really well, for example, if you win your state championship, if you're the best chess player in your state, there's lots of opportunities to go to special invitational tournaments, like national championships that are by invitation only. And those are definitely the types of places where you're going to start seeing the players that are maybe going on to play chess in college also, and maybe even going on to play it professionally.
So before we try to turn pro, taking it back to our kids and homeschooling, what kind of skills do you see that chess can impart on our family? You know, what additional things do we get out of learning to play chess that our kids can leverage in other subjects and other areas?
Yeah, I like that's something this is something I really enjoy talking about. Before I do, let me point out, don't get into chess to go pro. That is don't get into chess to make a living out of it. That is not a good plan. Even it's one of those unfortunate truths that it's definitely, unless you hit it big with becoming a famous chess streamer on Twitch, there's not many big bucks in the chess world. That is not probably the right path if that's your goal to make a lot of money. But chess is still, like you said, very useful, and for kids, and it still is useful even if your goal is successful academia, even if your goal is to get a college scholarship. It's still useful for that because it has such a profound effect on kids, and it has so much potential just to, for example, develop the types of skills that could be useful at any time in life. So the one example I like to talk about a lot is the frontal lobe of your brain, in charge of executive functions. And when we're talking about kids, maybe the most important part is decision-making ability and impulse control. And something like chess, where you are rewarded by being less impulsive and by thinking about your decisions and the possible consequences of your decisions, it's a remarkably useful skill for kids who are typically going through this phase in their life where they're, generally speaking, if you've ever met kids, have trouble with their impulses. So, and it's another thing that if you're going down the list of what the types of things that chess can help with, decision-making ability, practicing logic is a great word. Your analysis, memorization, maybe not the most important thing in the world, but it certainly exercises it. Another thing that's a little more social than academic is that I love about chess is getting used to the idea of losing, and how powerful of a lesson that can be for kids. Not just getting used to losing and becoming a better sport, or try not to be a sore loser, but also learning how to see losing as a learning opportunity. There's a lot of character growth in that, to be able to lose a game and not just throw a tantrum, but to actually, which is hard to do even for adults, to go back and say, okay, let me study this game that I lost and I feel really sad about. I'm going to figure out what I did wrong, and I'm going to try to improve on that. And that's those types of life skills are really incredibly powerful and fun to share with kids.
The thing that I always enjoy about chess, it reminds me a lot. I played a lot of golf in high school, and with golf, you're playing against an opponent very often, but also you're playing against the course. You're playing as a team and a team structure, and you're trying to trying to get better along the way. And it doesn't necessarily mean anything that you lost. It's just, have you improved along the way, and have you learned, and what can you do to be better, the next time you go out? And I see a lot of parallels there. Is there a style of chess that you would recommend for younger kids? Is it just regular chess, timed, bullet, rapid chess, blitz? I mean, there's a lot of different styles of chess.
Mm-hmm.
Is there one that you like to suggest, just like start off basic, or are there other things that you like?
Generally, it depends on what your goals are. And I think generally speaking, the consensus is if your goal is growth in the game, if your goal is to improve, avoiding bullet, there's a little debate out there, but it's generally seems to be a strong consensus to gravitate towards longer games if your goal is improvement, unless of course your goal is improvement in bullet, right? Unless you just want to be the best bullet player on chess.com, right? Then that's a different
For those of
goal.
us that don't know what bullet is.
Say 1 minute on the clock for each person. Just
oh boy,
insanely quick moves.
Oh, that's where they slap the clock.
Right. But it's mostly popular online too, with no slapping required. Right, but yeah, you can play it over the board too, and then it's very wild, but probably not best for growth. For kids, as a coach, I would definitely recommend slower time controls.
Okay.
And that's partly because at the big competitions, each player might have 2 hours on their clock, so that's what you would want to train for. And of course, then you get better if kids gravitate towards bullet though, and that has to do with that frontal lobe too. There's and that instant gratification. So you're not gonna get all those benefits of considering the consequences of your actions very much in bullet.
So you have a kid in your class. His name is Shmatthew, and he's been playing his dad for 3, maybe 30 years, and has never beat his father. How would you help Shmatthew to finally defeat the evil Sauron chess player that I could never can never defeat?
So if it's a very specific matchup between Shmatthew and his dad, then the first thing I would ask is do the games that you play always have the same opening? And that's the first place I would start. If Shmatthew knew that his dad always played the Italian game or always played the French defense, that's definitely a good place to start. Shmatthew would need to study that opening so that he wouldn't make any blunders in the opening. So he could get out of the opening with a good position and knowing what's going on. And if we get to the middle game in an even position, knowing what's going on, then it's so much at that point, depending on the level of these players, so much about tactics. So what I would do, other than study the opening of what the game is usually, or just knowing your opening well and being prepared for the opening, is tactics. Go on a chess website. There's lots of great ones to choose from nowadays, and do the puzzles. They call them tactics or puzzles, and just do dozens of them. Maybe I would, if this was a real goal, a real serious goal, I would set aside 10 to 20 minutes a day and say, I'm going to do my puzzles for the day. And that vision, that tactical vision will 9 times out of 10, depending on what level these players are, it's all going to come down to tactics. It's going to be one moment in the game where someone walks into a fork, or you don't miss your chance to win a free piece. It's almost always about tactics.
Okay, so your answer is to pump dad full of Hemingway daiquiris. I got
you. Right. So study your tactics and spike the drink.
Like the joke. Got it.
Well, this was great. Thank you so much, Ryan. Chess is something that I've always been mediocre at and didn't have a good understanding of. I have a new appreciation. I think this might be something to teach the kids. So,
Oh, and last question: what's the best response to an E4 opening?
Oh, C5.
C5. Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us today and making us a part of your homeschool journey. Please engage with us on social media. Join our Homeschool Together podcast group on Facebook and find us at Homeschool Together Podcast on Instagram. We'd love to hear your feedback, questions, and recommendations. Until next time.
Happy homeschooling!